Well, good morning to you all y bienvenidos a todos. My name is Belle Whelan. I have the pleasure of being a member of the Board of Excelencia in Education, and I am so excited that all of you have joined us this morning here in person and the press on the phone. This is an exciting day for Excelencia because we've got some news. Not all good, but still some news, and I think all of us learn best when we have information. In your chairs, if you're here in the room, there is a copy of the report that will be discussed this morning and some additional information for you. A lot has been said since President Obama came in office about the need to increase the number of college completers. Conversation started out with college graduates, always being translated to mean a baccalaureate degree, and folks from community colleges and technical colleges said, yo, wait a minute, associate degrees and certificates count as well because they employ people. And part of the goal, and I say part of the goal of a college education, is to be able to get a job. I often tell people, even as a psychology major, I knew I had to get a job. While college is not all job training, it is indeed a stepping stone to a better life for everyone. And today we want to talk about the progress that's being made with Latino students because the largest growth that's occurring in this country is occurring among Latinos. And we need to make sure that they are prepared to take on the workforce, to take on the roles of community leaders, and for me to take my job so I can retire soon. So we are excited that you're here today. I do want to take the opportunity again to say thank you and to introduce the part of the brains behind this organization. Sarita Brown is the president of Excelencia in Education, and she and I have been on this road for years here, making sure that folks are aware of what's going on. I have, in my paid life, I am the president of the regional accrediting body here in the South. Everybody knows as SACS. And I tell people I'm on the college side, so please don't ask me anything about Atlanta Public Schools, because I don't know. But education has kind of run through my blood, and student success certainly, and especially for minority students, is very near and dear to my heart. So it was a no-brainer when Sarita asked me if I would join the Board of Excelencia. So it is my pleasure to be here. I hope that you will engage in conversation today and leave here having all the information you need to go out and make great things happen. And without further ado, I bring to the podium Sarita Brown.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to be here in Atlanta. It is truly a first for us in terms of setting down here in this city, in this state, and in this region. It's an important week at Excelencia in Education, and to underscore its importance, I'm going to start at the very beginning, which is Excelencia in Education is a nonprofit organization headquartered in Washington, D.C., and our mission is accelerating Latino student success in higher education. As Belle suggested, when the policy world began to turn their attentions to the question of how is this country going to thrive as we look at a knowledge economy, as we begin to recognize what our current productivity, to use the jargon, is in terms of college graduates and what it could be, we were there. And we were there in three ways. Our mission, as I said, is Latino student success. One of the most practical ways to measure that is college completion. While many things happen when someone is college educated, most of them very positive, not only for the students, their families, and the communities, the question of who is completing and how can we collectively look at the higher education enterprise and see that it is as responsive as students and families need. That's where we have a common cause in terms of this policy agenda on college completion and our mission. But the second element, and it's very straightforward, is that recognition of human capital. A country's most precious resource is its people. And we know that. In policy circles, we particularly know that every 10 years when the census data is released. And at that time, it feels like, or at least it has since 2000, as if people suddenly discover Latinos. It happens every 10 years when the census data is released. I come from Texas, so I find that comical on a good day, and on a bad day I'm thinking, who are these people? Well, that is the other intersection of this discussion. Because our mission is accelerating Latino student success, we have always looked at this question of human capital, and we've done it with an asset-based perspective. We're not taking sides on strategies right now, but what we are taking sides on is that we have people in this country eager to participate, to contribute, and that education is the pathway to do that. So that is the second point of convergence. The third is this initiative, which has allowed us to devote time and energy to the study of how we are succeeding in terms of college production. That initiative has a big name: Ensuring America's Future by Increasing Latino College Completion. It began in 2009 with a grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and with support from the Lumina Foundation. It has grown over these last 3 years into a 65-partner initiative with funding from other foundations as well as companies. But its core is the proposition that we must always begin with data, be very practical about the measurement, and be action-oriented. So it's not enough to simply know the numbers. The second part of it is, and what are we going to do about it? And for that reason, we are delighted to have this opportunity to spend time with you talking about what we've learned in terms of the 50-state analysis of college completion, and then more particularly, what we are seeing happening here in Georgia and in the South. That's the background. The other part of my role this morning is to let you know how this next hour is going to transpire. What I'm going to do is have the privilege of introducing my colleague, which I'll do with a little bit more fanfare, who will give us, this is the heart, this is the meat of what we're going to do today, the analysis and the particular reference to the data for here, in this region. But in doing this, we are also doing it in the company of some of our 65 partners. And I'm going to introduce them, beginning with those that are in the room, and I will say the name of any who is not in hopes that they will arrive by the time they're called. So the partners that will be joining us are Cheryl Blanco, who is Vice President for Special Projects at the Southern Region Educational Board, which is based here in Atlanta. Cheryl is by profession and by temperament a long-distance runner on issues of diversity and participation, having held positions in the West as well as in the South. A fine colleague and one who you can claim because she is here in Atlanta. Following her will be Alejandra Rincon. She is the Chief Programs Officer at the Hispanic Scholarship Fund. Hispanic Scholarship Fund is an organization which we hope you know about, and if you don't, you will hear about. She is also someone who has had vast experiences in the issues of funding students and has worked in Texas as well as the national work she does now. Following her will be Yolanda Watson-Spiva, who is Executive Director of Project Grad in Atlanta. Project Grad is a partner in Ensuring America's Future, and this is our first opportunity to work directly with Project Grad Atlanta, although you'll hear probably informally that it's not the first time that the three of us have had a chance to work with Yolanda. And then the other individuals who are listed as respondents and who probably once they master the traffic will be able to join us are Kent McGuire, who's the Executive Director of the Southern Educational Fund. And I am just now realizing that someone who is in the room and who should be joining us, but you can sit there if you want to, is Julie Cashin. Julie Cashin is the Vice President and Single Stop USA. Single Stop USA is in the group of the newest partners for the Ensuring America's Future. Single Stop is an organization which I know Julie will tell you about that is very focused on how to bundle the kinds of information that exists, the kinds of financial services that exist, and then very innovative about how to bring those kinds of resources to college settings so that all students can take advantage of them, not only the traditional means of financial aid, but also the financial aid services that are available through state and federal resources. Those will be the respondents. Now, I've just seen a colleague from the Southern Educational Foundation walk in the room, and I'm going to ask, are you here instead of Kent?
No, he'll be here.
All right, so then we all know. We're going to watch for Kent when he walks in the room. So at this point, what I would like to do is to introduce to you Deborah Santiago. Deborah is the co-founder of Excelencia in Education. She is the vice president for policy and research, and she is the author of this analysis and, quite frankly, all of the publications issued by Excelencia in Education. She is a thought leader in the country on the issues of the use of data, the asset-based model, and the most practical bridge between what research and analysis can indicate, but the real question, and what do we do to seize the moment and capture the talents of Latino students and bring them into education and into society? Deborah Santiago.
So basically what she said is I'm the resident data nerd on these topics. So thank you so much for being here. We had a national release 2 days ago in Washington, D.C., and did it over the phone. It's never quite the same when you do a release over the phone with reporters, being able to see people and talk to them as well. So I had a formal PowerPoint for the webinar, and I decided I'd rather have you look at me than so you can see this nice little presentation of the cover, but hopefully we can engage in dialogue about what we found. As Sarita shared, we really are focused on data as a tool to inform practice, not to prove or disprove, but to make sure that we are doing what we must and can do to serve this population and all of our students. We put together, as part of Ensuring America's Future, a strand of data, because we often find that there's a great ignorance with not knowing about the Latino population, what we think we know about the population and what really is the case. And certainly at the policy level, we're very complicit of what our individual experiences are, thinking that speaks to the population more broadly. And what we found time and time again, when you look at the data, it's just not as simple and clear-cut. And if we want to have effective policy and practice, it really has to be guided with what's the actual profile of our students in our individual states, at the national level, in our communities, to make a difference. And that's the kind of commitment we've made to make sure that as we're looking to what serves our communities best overall, and certainly Latinos, that we are paying attention to where we are today on those issues. So when we started Ensuring America's Future, I had this great, sexy 26-page guide with projections from 2010 to 2020, disaggregated by race, ethnicity, with multiple metrics. It was a very appealing piece if you like data. And then after the 4 people that read it, we realized that we really needed to make sure we put something together that was more useful and more relevant for where the critical work has to be. And that really is on the ground. And that is working with students, and that is working in some ways at the policy levels, in communities, at the state level, and certainly creating a policy space at the national level, which is part of what we try to do, but also at the state level in areas that it matters. And so we decided to reconfigure a little bit and build on that national guide to really look at the data on a state-by-state basis. And, this is all public data, so I don't think that what we're adding in terms of value is anything necessarily new. But what we often find is that when we talk about Latinos, it's often the footnote or the aside or, in this corner over here. And we want to make sure as an organization that we are including Latinos in the dialogue and discourse, that we don't just have this young and growing population as a footnote or as an aside. And that the opportunity to use a Latino lens can sometimes make us look at issues that seem intractable in higher education in new ways to allow us to confront them to serve our populations of today. And I think that's where we think we are trying to make a contribution to this broader discourse. So let me get to some of the key findings here. And I think you have them here, and we have all 50 states with the same exact data points, looking very attractive on fact sheets that you can pull individually if you'd like. And if you'd like to look at the national data or look at the benchmarking guide, we have those available as well. But so let me just do a little bit of compare and contrast. First, talking about some of the key findings that key points that guided our efforts as we looked at this. First, the data are clear, and this is not anyone can tell you this that really is looking robustly at the data. The national goals, whether it's the administration or Gates or Lumina or College Board, the many organizations that have posited national college completion goals, we know we cannot reach any of those goals set by whoever's out there without a tactical plan that increases Latino college completion. The data bear it out very clearly. And I think we can say that in an objective way to really focus on the effort rather than hemming and hawing as to whether we invest here or invest there. And that's critical for us as we think about the data. A second is, in this policy conversation that we're having about college completion, it's really been about the last 3 years, the conversation has shifted from access to completion, and now we're talking about productivity. And what we don't want to forget is that these are students, and that access is a critical precursor to completion and productivity, obviously. So we can't forget the access agenda while we're working on making sure more of our students complete and do so in a timely way or an efficient way, whether it's college affordability or whether it's greater productivity. Whichever side you're taking, we can't forget these are about students. And increasingly, the students who are eligible, ready to go, are Latino. And we can't forget that message in the context of being more productive and therefore becoming more selective and therefore leaving out the very communities that we're going to be depending on for our near future, if not already, in our economic competitiveness as a country. The other is, we need to make sure that we're really looking at and supporting state and community efforts. We are a national organization, but we know that instead of having policy try to drive down and force good programmatic efforts, that we need to learn from what's happening on the ground with communities day in and day out and have that inform policy rather than just having it top down. And for us, it's our commitment. One of the reasons, many reasons that we're here, and we've established enough conversations that we know we need to come back and learn more about what you all are doing in Georgia and in the southern states to make sure that as we talk about Latinos and what's possible and what's working, that we are able to aggregate it to inform better policy and efforts. And that's our commitment, to be the translators. I often tease and say, I'm trilingual. I speak Spanish, English, and data. But I think we also need to make sure we're all bilingual enough to be able to translate good practice to good policy. I think that is critical for the work we're doing in D.C., but certainly whether it's the State House here or in other communities. So let me get to some of the key findings, because I have to give you a little bit of data, just so that, compel you to take a look at these fact sheets. And then hopefully our colleagues will speak, and then we can engage in a little bit of a dialogue. So here's some of the key points that I'll raise. And I was debating, do I put a PowerPoint up there and show you these great graphics? But no, I'm not going to do that. I can send it to you, however. So, when we look nationally at the population, you all know these basic figures. I'm going to share it with you as context, because as we start ferreting down, looking at the educational component, it's important we think about it. So about 16% of the U.S. population is Latino. That we know. Again, this is all public data, so it's census. This is not something that we're creating. In Georgia, 9% of the population is Latino. And while it doesn't seem like a lot, we did a quick state ranking, and Georgia ranks 10th out of 50 states in its concentration of Latinos. That's pretty significant. We always think about California, Florida, Texas. Georgia's right up there, top 10. And paying attention to what's happening, what's working in the population in Georgia is important, and we need to think about that at the national level. But, I have to admit, that was kind of a aha moment for me. I am very complicit in not thinking about places like Georgia and the important role of Latinos here. And, we'll admit that because we need to be here working with the people on the ground making a difference. So that's a little bit of the context. The other big point that we wanted to make about this aggregated piece is that the Latino population overall, the median age is much younger. And that matters as we think about policy and practice in ways we don't often think about, because it's important to take a look at the total degree attainment. It is important. But we can't forget that this is such a young and growing population that we're in the pipeline right now, or getting into the pipeline. The opportunity to invest and make a difference for this community is now. This isn't something that's down the road. This is now that we see the growth. And that's important. So we look at the median age. The median age for Latinos nationally is 27. The median age overall is 40. So when you think about that from a policy perspective, that really matters, right? Especially when you look at education policy. Because we have, depending on the number. The most recent number is 21% of Latinos have an associate degree or higher, of adults, okay? But our concentration is really in the K-12 and early childhood area in terms of even the largest numbers. So if our adult population has a low level of educational attainment, that means that so many of our youth, of the Latino population, are potentially first in their family to go to college. Policies and programs that address this population of potential first-generation college goers, that matters a great deal as we think about what's going to work for our populations overall. So that's why looking at the median age matters. It's a big difference, right? 27 versus 40 established. I mean, it speaks to a lot of the reason why there are variances in income levels and others as well. In Georgia, did I write that down? Yeah, the median age, of Latinos is 25. It's even younger than the national average. Although you have the average age of all Georgians is 38. So that's still a little less than the national average. But still, these are median ages that are relatively young. And we choose to see this as opportunities to invest, right? All right, K-12. Maybe I need to go a little bit faster, but bear with me here. I think this is important as we think about what we need to be doing. So, degree attainment. Oh no, K-12. Let me go to K-12 because that was just median age. So K-12 enrollment. Nationally, Latinos are 22% of K-12 public school enrollment. 22%. That's even more than our national representation, which is 15%. There's just another proof that we are very young, and we're even more represented in K-12 than we are in the overall population. In Georgia, 11% of the K-12 public enrollment is Latino. Your overall Latino population is 9%, 11% in K-12. And you all know, even better than we do it, which metropolitan areas and where you see concentrations and possibility of investing targeted resources. But those are significant numbers that we don't often think about, right? All right. Now I'll get to degree attainment. Again, these are quick snapshots, but I hope they're helpful as we think about ideas of what we can do to act. So nationally, we have in the national one, it's about 19% when we pulled the data in 2010. In 2011, we saw about 21% of Latinos have an associate degree or higher versus about 38% or so of all in the United States. In Georgia, about 18% of Latinos in Georgia, Latino adults, have an associate degree or higher. So imagine if 11% of your K-12 population are Latino, 18% of your Latino adults have an associate degree or higher. This area of looking at first-generation college goers is really important. So the other thing you'll find here, and we did a little bit of graphic, is look at some completion metrics. We do deal a lot in the policy space. And what we find, in policy, we always look for silver bullet, right? You want to know the one measure that's going to give me the answer from which to act. What is that measure? And too often that metric has been graduation rates, right? Because people think they know what it is. Rarely do we find they actually know what it is. But it seems to make sense. The graduation rate when people complete, right? It's not that simple, right? So we tried to come up with 3 metrics. I would argue that none of the 3 are perfect on their own. But maybe looking at this completion in 3 different ways, using metrics, can help us think about this in additional ways. So this is not to report that any single metric is the best one, but we tried to look at data in different ways to make sure we were trying to address it. And I think this is still an area for us to focus our energy on. But when we looked at graduation rates, and again, you have the 3 metrics that we've looked at overall. You look at graduation rates. As I hope most of you know, graduation rates track a specific cohort of students, first-time, full-time freshmen, and looks to see if they finish within 3 years of their community college or 6 years if they're at a 4-year institution. Well, we don't have here, but we have lots of data and other fact sheets that show that a really large concentration of Latinos and other students as well don't fit that first-time, full-time cohort tracking. So students who enroll part-time are not included in graduation rates. Students who transfer, either from a 2-year to 4-year or 4-year to 4-year or 2-year to 2-year, they're not included. Students who've stopped out and go back are not included in graduation rates. And that represents a significant profile of Latinos. So for us, we have our issues with graduation rates, but we also know that we don't want to negate the importance of being able to measure and track progress either. So, we definitely want to include graduation rates as we think about it, but not just leave it at that. And you'll see in the one we shared with you here, there is an equity gap when you look at any one of the three metrics in Georgia and certainly nationally. The point being, no matter how you're going to measure it, we are seeing gaps which are opportunities for action. And that's how we would choose to frame this. Graduation rates, there's about 4 or 5% gap, equity gap, between Latinos and white non-Hispanics. A second metric we're using are completions, and hopefully you'll ask more questions about it, but completions per 100 FTE. This is our attempt, and we worked with statisticians and people nerdier than I am to try and calculate this. And so in creating a full-time equivalent number, we were trying to find ways to aggregate that part-time student, whereas the first number is only first-time, full-time freshmen, and those who are currently enrolled. So obviously or have just completed. That's one number. The second number tries to look at those who are enrolled and create a full-time equivalent, which I've been asked multiple times this. You take all the full-time students that are enrolled, you take the part-timers, and there's a little formula, basically a 3-to-1 ratio. Every 3 part-timers is 1 full-time equivalent. You add the two together, and you get an FTE. And so this is an attempt to create that metric. Again, not perfect, but ways to include part-timers. And you see kind of a similar gap in Georgia. It's a little bit different at the national level. And the third is looking at completions, and I say completions, they're credentials, so they include certificates and on, relative to the population in need. And this is an interesting one that I think we need to, for all three of them, we need to do a little bit more work on. I'll acknowledge that. But you see just a really large gap in Georgia and other places. And the attempt here, rather than looking at students who are enrolled and whether they complete or not, is looking at the broader community. And looking at using census data to say, in this case, in Georgia, when we look at all adults 18 to 44, and what percentage of those, what number of those have a degree and not, what are we seeing in terms of completion? And this is important for many reasons, but it's an attempt to look at the population more broadly than just through college enrollment. So there are people that might have moved here who don't have a college education. They're in that bottom number, the denominator. And then looking at all those who have a degree here is in that top number. So it's an attempt for us to try and look at not just who are enrolled, but the broader community and the need in the populations to make sure more of us are educated. Okay, so that's, I guess, finishing a little bit of the data. There's a lot more there. We tried to really compact, there's a lot of data out there. Try to figure out how do we create a snapshot that's useful, that guides or informs, and that can further be informed by the kind of practices going on. So the last piece, 2 pieces I'd like to share with you is, we try to put together this snapshot. And it's data-driven, but we know that so much of what matters is really much more qualitative in nature as well. And so you'll see in the fact sheets, I think we have 2 examples there. We always try to include promising practices, because we can't forget it's not just about the data, it's the action, right? So you see 2 examples in Georgia. Every one of the 50 states has a couple of examples. Surprisingly, in I think over 20 states, we have examples that have been nominated to us of promising practices with evidence of effectiveness for Latino students. And few of these programs only serve Latinos, but amongst those they serve, they know with their data that Latinos are doing as well as, or even better than other students. And that's an asset-based approach. That's something to pay attention to. Too often, Sarita and I are in conversations where, if the data compel, people say, so I don't know what to do. Well, here are some examples of what people across the country are doing. And, we kind of jokingly say, people are starting to ask now. The Department of Ed is trying to pull together kind of what are some promising practices that are working. Well, we've been doing this since 2005, and we're small. But yeah, we'll share, because we have a database online that people can search by issue area, whether it's college prep, college access, retention, transfer, completion. This is our commitment to say there are so many wonderful things happening across the country that we need to be paying attention to. Let's share that with others, because we all need to be engaged in efforts to increase the completion in our country. So you see two examples there, and proud to say that, these are in Georgia. Some other states, we don't have examples concretely that are looking at Latinos. And so it's there's Hispanic Outreach and Leadership Program in Armstrong Atlantic State University, and Latino Student Services and Outreach, LASO, at Georgia State University. Just two examples, but really the point being there are wonderful things happening. We need to pay attention. If these are effective practices or resonate with what people in the community are trying to do, let's take a look at them. And then, the bigger picture for us at a policy level is, can these efforts be brought to scale, or can they be replicated? And I can't say universally the answer to that is yes, but it's important that we pay attention to that so we're not just grousing about where we are or not as a country. The last piece I'd say is that, Excelencia, we are data-driven, but it's not just about the data. So here's what one small nonprofit is trying to do, and I wanted to make sure and share that with you in hopes of trying to learn and gather what others are doing so we can further highlight and bring attention at the national stage that we have to talk about these efforts. So here are the three areas that we're trying to work with ensuring America's future. We're trying to inform the broader public on these efforts, and I think you've heard that enough. I don't need to go into tons of detail, but we've got roadmaps of what policy recommendations are that can make a difference. We've got all kinds of efforts trying to inform the broader public. We're trying to increase engagement and collaboration. And, ensuring America's future, we have 65 partners representing 7 sectors as an effort to make sure that we are engaging and collaborating and serving this population amongst all of the populations we're serving. And that's really important because it really not just validates that the kind of work happening here matters and that there are others doing it, but that other sectors are seeing the value and importance of that in what we're doing overall. And the third is we're really trying to increase knowledge of effective practices and tactics. And that is, we've got a Growing What Works database, is what we call it, that's online. We've got examples of Excelencia. I think next week is the end of nominations, and we'll be moving forward with that. So if you have a good practice, please get online and nominate. But we have a celebration where we celebrate the positive impact and practices of programs and departments across the country. And that's our way of saying we need to continue to recognize and grow these kinds of efforts. And that's the commitment we make as an organization to those who are doing the hard work. So thank you for your time and attention. I'm going to pass it to our colleagues who will share a little bit about what they're doing as partners with Excelencia. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Cheryl Blanco with the Southern Regional Education Board. And I'll apologize, my voice is probably going to get a little scratchy because I think the pollen is settling in. First, let me say congratulations to Sarita and to Deborah for another excellent report, one of many coming out of Excelencia. SREB is really privileged and very happy to be a partner with Excelencia in these efforts. As many of you may know, Southern Regional Education Board is located over here on another edge of the Georgia Tech campus. We've been in Atlanta for over 60 years. It is a nonprofit organization, and in many ways what we're trying to do with our 16 member states parallels, I think, what Excelencia is doing, which makes this partnership to us very valuable, and I think that we can help play a significant role in carrying the same messages that Sarita and Deborah have expressed this morning. We work with 16 states in the South, and we work very closely with the policymakers, the legislatures, and the governors. The governor always serves as our board chair. But we also work very deeply in the states, trying to take the policy message that we feel is probably one of our major strengths and carry it down onto the campus level. Let me share with you just a couple of ways that we're doing that and how we will be using the information that is in this report to kind of complement and supplement other information that we make available to our members and to our states. We have 2 very large initiatives right now, both of which are supported by foundations, the Gates Foundation and Lumina Foundation. What we're trying to do is to reach out to students at kind of both ends of the continuum, or at least from the middle on, we're looking at the college readiness side of the equation because, and we completely concur with Excelencia, the pipeline and what's happening with students before they even get out of high school is critical in helping us ensure that they not only get into college, but they are successful there. So we have been working now for about 4 years on an initiative that we call College Readiness in our states to help the states look at the way that they're preparing students. We do support very strong curriculum. The Common Core state standards have been embraced by most of our states, of course, including Georgia. We are encouraging states to take those, embed them in the curriculum and the math. Literacy, make sure the students can read well before they leave high school so they can do well in all of their courses. And another key piece of that message is looking at the students in 11th grade and making sure that they are on track to be successful as they get through high school and go into college. And we're helping our states develop bridge courses or transitional courses. So if students in 11th grade are assessed and found to be weak in areas, that they take that 12th grade senior year as an opportunity to address those issues, cut down on remediation, and make sure that all students are ready to go into college-level courses. And we think this is particularly important and helpful for students who are coming out of families that have not had a college experience, so our first-generation, first-time-in-college students. These courses are being developed. I think Georgia is looking at them as well in other ways. But this is one of the ways that we are trying to help our states understand and really address the issues that college is important, but you have to be prepared to do well once you get out of high school. On the college side, we have another initiative around college completion, working with a number of other national groups to help move all of our states toward an educational attainment level of at least 60% of the adult population with a good, solid certificate, associate, or bachelor's degree or above. And in order to reach this goal, again, drawing on some of the previous comments from both Saritha and from Deborah, we need to help students focus very intensely on their college career, make sure they have a major, make sure early on, make sure they get the kind of counseling that they need, help them work from year to year. First-year experiences are critical. It's important to get them beyond the first year, and so we have to look at second year, sophomore, junior persistence as well. The College Completion Initiative also looks at related issues. Financial aid. Are we using our financial aid appropriately and adequately based on what the student needs are? Are we encouraging our institutions to look at their needs, put the money where the programs are that are doing the most, having the most success? What are our state policies around funding to help ensure that that these funds are dedicated in a way that helps students and that keeps a strong, high-quality education, but also helps to move students along. So I just want to take a few more minutes again, congratulate you. We're very proud to be partners in this work. We welcome you to the South, all 16 states, not just Georgia. And I'll turn the mic over now to our next partner.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank Excelencia for inviting HSF here today. Thanks to Sarita and to Deborah for this. HSF is proud to be part of this effort. My name is Alejandra Rincon, and I represent the Hispanic Scholarship Fund. We are the nation's largest nonprofit giving scholarships to Latino students. We have been in business for 37 years, and this has been much, part of our mission to get more Latinos holding a baccalaureate degree. Our sister initiative to Excelencias, Generation First Degree, aims to place a college degree in every Latino household. In Georgia, we have been very fortunate during the past 10 years, especially to get a lot of support from funders in the area who are interested in, especially in in getting more Latinos to go to college. And this is important. Deborah talked about the figures and the growth of the Latino community. And if you look at some of the counties here in Georgia over the past 10 or 15 years, you see 400% growth. So obviously, that's how you get to having Georgia being state number 10. For us, during this past decade, for sure, we've been able to give over $8 million to Latino students here, about 2,500 students. And obviously this is good, but it's not enough. We get a lot of applicants, and a lot of students go without the funding that they need. In addition to the work that we've done in the scholarship piece, we do also educational outreach, and I'm happy to see one of our former colleagues here who did much of this work here in Georgia. In the past decade, we've done over 300 events, reaching about 30,000 people here in the state. And that's important for us because obviously besides the financial need that this community has, there is also the need about knowing how to get to a college degree, right? You don't know what you don't know, and our community doesn't know how to get to college, how to access scholarships and all that. And that also has been important for us as a national organization to really learn about the challenges that the community faces here in Georgia, which are very particular and very different sometimes than what we have seen in states like Texas or California. More importantly, during this past decade, we have been able to engage in 2 initiatives here, 2 pilots, one of them with the University of Georgia, and this was a pilot that was funded for 5 years, where we looked at what it takes to increase the number of Latinos who are being recruited, retained, and graduating from the university. And it was a very interesting project. We selected 10 schools, who we call target schools, and these were schools where the majority of the students were Latino, were low income, and had very little, the school had very little history of sending students to UGA. In the 5 years, the enrollment from those schools grew 78% into UGA, and this is important, because you need to create that pipeline of Latinos going to the flagship institution. But most importantly was that those 90 students that we funded had a higher retention rate than most UGA students. And that is important because the students were 98% low income. And so I think it shows that when you have targeted initiatives, when institutions of higher ed come to the table to say, we're going to do this in a very dedicated way, in a very targeted way, then obviously you can get those results. And so it was important for us, and I think it's a good example, and as you said, hopefully something that can be replicated, because good pilots are good, but obviously they need to grow, and hopefully this is something that the University of Georgia can sustain and can leverage, and grow from that, and grow, the Latino representation from that. The other pilot we're currently engaged on is work in 4 different communities in the state of Georgia. This is advancing our Generation First degree in Atlanta, Gainesville, Dalton, and Savannah. And this is working with partners in the area who have the expertise, who have the know-how, who also want to advance the Latino college completion agenda, but obviously who haven't had the history of 37 years of doing this work. It is important for us to be able to work with them. We're learning a lot of what's happening in rural areas of Georgia, things that, again, we don't see when we mainly work, in places like Atlanta. Most of our scholars, and I put a fact sheet, most of our scholars in Georgia are from Atlanta, but so we're learning a lot of the stuff that's happening in the small, rural areas, challenges, perceptions about Latinos, where they should be going, what people think they should be doing, all of that. I think that gives us obviously a great knowledge as a national organization, and we also hope to augment their knowledge about how to work with Latinos, and we're partnering with 3 national youth organizations, Big Brothers Big Sisters, BGCA, and the YMCA of Savannah, Georgia, and we're hoping to also augment their knowledge about what it takes to work with Latinos. I think at the end of the day what we're learning is obviously what Excelencia knows well, which is this is not an effort that one organization can accomplish. We know this is a joint effort. So we hope, in that spirit that you join their efforts and that you join our efforts to have a college degree in every Latino household. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Yolanda Watson-Spiva. I serve as the executive director of a nonprofit here in Atlanta called Project Grad Atlanta. And Grad is actually an acronym which appropriately stands for Graduation Really Achieves Dreams. And that's essentially what we're talking about here, is making the dream of college a reality, but not just making the dream something that students can see, but something that students can actually touch, feel, and taste. And so I'll tell you a little bit about what Project Grad does in Atlanta and across the nation, but also about the ways in which we support Excelencia's vision and the complete college vision. So we're one of 14 sites nationwide, project grads are normally located in pretty urban areas where you have many economically disadvantaged students. Many of them are the first in their families to attend college. I think you're beginning to see a trend here. And so organizations like ours tend to make sure that those students are, first of all, we work with them very early. We want to do an early capture and captivate their attention and interest in college. So we talk about taking them on a trajectory from being college inquisitive to being college eager, then being college aware, college exposed, then college ready, then college bound, then college enrolled, then college persistent, then college successful, and then college completers. And so that takes a lot of us along that continuum to make that happen. And so at any point during that continuum, if one thing happens that disrupts that family structure, one thing happens in that academic situation where a student is told you're not eligible for AP, or I don't think you're AP material, that student can be derailed and potentially not become a college enrolled and college successful and college completing student. And so what Project Grad seeks to do is to, first of all, change the mindset. We create a college-going culture partnering with schools and school districts. We don't just assume that a student is the only one that has to have their eyes focused on college. Teachers and administrators have to believe that student can go to college. And if that doesn't happen, many adults have talked about the fact that there was that one teacher who told them they weren't college material. There was that one counselor that said, don't even bother applying. And so we equip students with tools and strategies and structures, and their parents, because I must also add, a lot of times we like to isolate students from their families. And in minority communities, family is very important, the extended family and the nuclear family. And so we try to equip the families with information. We don't want to be the ones that come in as a savior and teach the student or teach the institution that they're going to attend how to deal with that student. We want to make sure that all of the structures that support them also are able to do that. We work here in Georgia. We partner with most of the major colleges and universities across the state, but also in the city of Atlanta. We're talking about best practices. One of the things that we do, we work specifically in the metropolitan Atlanta community and with the Atlanta public schools and surrounding districts. Our student population in terms of Latino students is less than 5%. However, we still see Latino students as a significant source of our student body because there are attending issues that for all minority populations, we have about 94% African American, about 5%, about 4.5% Latino, and then the rest is other. And so in terms of the way that we deal with our students, yes, there are some commonalities between first generation and economically disadvantaged students. But even within that big 94% of African Americans, we don't presume that group is homogenous. And so we know that within any group, there's heterogeneity there, and we want to make sure that we attend to that. So the college and universities that we partner with, the main thing that we try to serve as, especially for the Latino students, is as an advocate. You know, with the DREAM Act and other barriers that have precluded students from being able to remain in college, we want to make sure that we are a support so that the financial means that students need to complete college are there. And we've been able to partner with some of the local institutions here in terms of providing institutional funds and private resources to help those students remain in college despite lack of citizenship and things of that nature. The other thing that we have done is created a partnership between Project Grad Atlanta, Atlanta Metropolitan College, as well as Oglethorpe University, which you know is a private institution. Atlanta Metropolitan College is a member of the Board of Regents. And we have been able to successfully transition many of our Latino students from Atlanta Metropolitan College to Oglethorpe University with resources that have been provided by private organizations to make sure that those students complete. And so we don't just wait for students to come to us. We understand that some students may not be aware that resources are available. They may not be aware that help and assistance is available. And so it is our job to go out and continue to support what students are seeking, which is the dream of college, and to make that dream a reality. So we too share the dream that not just every Latino student, every student in the state of Georgia and this nation must be college educated. And so within that realm, we know, especially with the numbers that Deborah has presented today, the problem is pervasive, and we have to do more. And so I thank you for inviting me and the opportunity to partner.
Hi, I'm Julie Cashin. I'm the Senior Vice President of Single Stop USA. We are, as sorry to mention, one of the new members of Ensuring America's Future. We're also relatively new. We're celebrating our 5-year anniversary birthday this year. So we're really proud to be a part of this effort and a partner of Excelencia's. Let me tell you a little bit about who we are, since we are new and you might not know. Single Stop's a part of this effort because what we do is we connect low-income community college students with the resources that they're eligible for, and we do it all in a single stop. We know that financial barriers are one of the major reasons that so many students drop out. There are many reasons, but financial are such a big one. We also know that interventions as little as $1,000 a year can make all the difference between staying in school and having to leave and not complete. And so what we do, our intervention is to marry the social safety net with community colleges. We put together 4 parts. We do public benefits access, legal counseling, financial counseling, and tax preparation. We bring all of these services into either the financial aid office or the student services office to serve students holistically, all in one place, and get them the financial resources that they need that can augment financial aid, augment scholarships, and help them stay in school through completion. Last year, we helped 20,000 community college students. We helped them access $40 million worth of benefits, tax refunds, and social services. 8,000 of these students were Latino, and we think that number is going to continue to grow. We are not in Georgia today. We are at Delgado Community College in New Orleans and Miami-Dade College in Florida. And at those schools, since we've started working with those southern schools, we've supported 2,600 Latino students and helped them to get access to our services. And we know that together, working with Excelencia, learning from all the other promising practices that are making a difference, we're going to be able to continue to serve more and more and help them to increase their retention rates and stay in school longer. This is especially important for low-income Latino students because there's also a gap not just in college completion, but in the rates of accessing all the supports that are eligible so that students don't have to choose between groceries and graduation. So, for example, the Department of Agriculture has noted that about 56% of eligible Latino students, or eligible Latino low-income families, are not accessing the nutrition assistance that they're eligible for. And in terms of the earned income tax credit, which can bring in, $2,000 or so into a student's household, into a family's household, Hispanic parents, low-income Hispanic parents, 27% of them knew about this program, as compared to 76% of non-Hispanic white parents. And so there's really an information gap there in what's available and what families can be accessing to help with the resources to stay in school. Single Stop bridges this gap. We connect students and their parents to these supports all in one place. This is eviction prevention, this is child care, this is nutrition assistance, this is food, it's credit repair as a debt management. And these make a big difference in student success. And so we aim to continue to grow and serve more and more students. We think that this data, these partnerships, the people in this room are really going to help to make this difference. And we're just so optimistic about the future. So thank you so much for including us.
My name's Kent McGuire, and I'm president of the Southern Education Foundation. I'm going to say a little bit about SEF because I'm persuaded that even though we've been around a very long time, not enough people know who we are and what we do. We do essentially 3 things. We work with minority-serving institutions, most recently over the last decade or so, very closely with Bell on issues of accreditation support. We work in K-12, P-12 really. Here we've been more of a research shop, think tank, advocacy organization focused on the broad policy issues and the kinds of changes in that sector that we think would promote access and excellence and opportunity for young kids, all kids, but especially kids of color and underrepresented groups. And the third thing we do is we run a small, boutique-ish, but high-fiber leadership program, an experience for college students, juniors and seniors at the undergraduate level, and to a great degree, graduate students. These interns come from all over the country, though we privilege the South in our selection process, I think is a good way to say it. And we create these 8-week field experiences in organizations in the South whose own missions and work are comparable to our own. I am proud to say, as we've studied internship programs across the country, you'd hardly find one with more diversity by gender and race and income than ours. 200 students applied this year for 10 slots. So one of the things we know we need to do with that leadership program is dramatically increase its scale so that our efforts come a little closer to the considerable demand for it. And these kids, we are certain, will be in rooms like this in the not too distant future, because this program has a decided emphasis on social justice and advancement. I should make a comment about our work in higher ed. We have absolutely no intention in leaving the core question of accreditation and institutional effectiveness. We do, however, think that we need to turn our attention more deliberately to the question of degree completion, and knowing that, seeing to it that the numbers of kids who enter college actually finish and make successful transitions to graduate school or to work. We think, because we have this history of working in higher ed and K-12, one of the things we have to pursue is much more vertical work that connects those two worlds. I'm a person who has lived in each, and I can appreciate better than many what an unnatural act it is for K-12 and higher ed to work seamlessly together. When I was the senior vice president at MDRC, we ran the national evaluation of Project Grad. And in many of the cities around the country, we're trying to test the strength of the interaction between the high schools and the higher education community in the big cities. So we will do that. And I think the action will be as much in these transition points between the 8th and 9th grade, between the 12th grade and the first year of college, as it will be in these two specific sectors. We couldn't be happier about our opportunity to partner with Excellencia. We're looking forward to lots of work in the ensuing years, both in this part of the country and nationally, for that matter. In about a month or two, we're going to be bringing the trustees and presidents of minority-serving institutions from really across the country here to Atlanta. The agenda, Bell knows this well, will focus on a number of things that bear significantly on this degree completion issue. We think holding the attention of institutional leaders is critical over time to getting some traction. Last thing I'll say is that my colleague James Minor, who heads up our work in higher ed, is keen on helping these institutions do one thing really well that we don't think they do as well as they need to, which is using data to assess student learning outcomes in clear and compelling ways and putting decision makers in a better position to act on the data that is available to them. So we look forward to working with Excelencia. Look forward to working with all of you, and we're thrilled that you brought this show to Atlanta. You had a wonderful webinar a day or two ago, which we listened to with great interest. Thank you all very much.
While Deborah gets ready to turn it to question and answer, because I want to be thorough about partners, we also have a representative from ACT with us. So if you would please stand. We're not going to put you on the spot to say anything, but the mention of the using data. One of the things that ACT did as we piloted our state efforts in Texas was launch Graduation Texas, and their focus is on the use of a new ACT tool to help campuses look at the impact of their student services as well as their academic practices on students. So during our partner dialogue, we might want to dig a little bit deeper and see if we can start to share some of that data. But thank you for joining us.
From tall people back down. So point of personal privilege, Yolanda and I met, it was 1994. I was thinking about, yes, it was, at the U.S. Department of Education. We were very young, right? Still young, but very young, presidential management fellows. People brought straight from graduate education into the department and had an instant connection. I think we were the only women of color, I think, in the entire Office of Post-Secondary Ed, the policy area. And here we are a couple of years later. Our lives have gone in multiple ways, but still looking at the same issues, same levels of commitment to the issues we care about in many iterations. So it's a pleasure to have her here and to see that, our lives take different paths, but we're still common area. So that's just a point of personal privilege as we were talking about connections between people. I think good people who care about issues and topics like this, we always find each other and try to lock arms in efforts to make a real difference to the communities we care about. So that's just a point of personal privilege. But we wanted to see if there were any questions and for our partners or for us or some core comments before, I think, subsequent to this, we're going to have some partners meeting because it's nice to hear what others are doing, but it is that connection between efforts of Single Stop and SEF and Project Grad that is really what we care about as well. So are there any questions or comments related to what we've shared heretofore? Yes, ma'am.
It's been in response, not necessarily to this piece of work, but maybe just in terms of data that has been disseminated to colleges and universities. Are you feeling like, or are you seeing a trend where action-oriented steps are being taken, policy changes are happening on the campuses in order to address some of the issues or there's the projections are changing what's happening on the campus? Because it seems like, from what I'm seeing, the view from here is that a lot of the campuses will take a Band-Aid approach, or if a student comes with an issue, we'll address it then. So it doesn't seem to be the long view of, when you see this sort of data, there are many implications, like you talked about the median age.
Sure. So just, I don't know if our colleague there was able to capture, so let me just repeat the question, Yolanda, a little bit more briefly, but to make sure we respect all of your question. So the question is, what have we seen from an institutional perspective about the use of this data or the inclusion of this kind of data in broader scale with their efforts overall? Is that an accurate way to summarize it? Okay. We've seen institutions and institutional leaders take this and really use it to support their efforts. Some to justify it or support it with their board members or with grantees in handfuls of ways. So if you're asking what we've seen nationwide, we do see their institutional leaders across the country. In our Growing What Works database, we have examples where people have taken good data and have said, we must do this. We must include Latinos in our efforts. We must make sure we're paying attention. We must track the progress of our community. So we have seen that. But I cannot say at the national level that we've seen this permeate and inform practice. We learned a long time ago that providing good data alone is not sufficient. You can highlight the issues and think, I've done my job, I can go home and and relax. And we learned a long time ago that that's not sufficient. It's critical, because we don't want to just speak extemporaneously because it matters, but using data, but it's not enough. And so we do work with institutions of higher education as a way to support their efforts, to help guide their efforts in many ways, and similar to what Kent was mentioning, sometimes informing them or making them aware for the very first time of the students that they even have on campus and the potential of what they can do. And so making sure that it's grounded with good data is critical, but not sufficient. We're hoping that we'll continue to partner and find institutions that we can bring attention to who are doing this good work. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Well, I hope that you all will take this, go forth and conquer with this wonderful data to make sure it's useful to you. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to pass it to Sarita to make sure we have closing remarks.
Thank you. This event is, as I said, a first in terms of Excelencia coming to Atlanta. But it's also a first in terms of coming to this campus. We have been appreciative every step of the way at how immediate, how responsive the institution has been. And as a testament to that responsiveness, I have the pleasure of introducing the provost at the Georgia Institute of Technology, Rafael Bras, who will give us comments and allow Belle and I to put the cherry on top before we break for the end of this session. Dr. Bras.
Good morning. I'm not going to take too much of your time, but I did want very much to take the opportunity to welcome you here. Here at Georgia Tech, we feel very proud of what we do for all our students, but certainly our commitment to students of color, staff of color, faculty of color. I'll give you a little bit of background on that, and I think I don't have to go too far in convincing you that what Excelencia does and all of you do is terribly important. You quote in your own material that by, I think, 2025, 22% of the population will be Hispanic. The number I use is that by 2050, 30% of the population will be Hispanic. That's an extraordinary number when you think of it. And when you put it in the context of a country that is going to be increasingly relying on educated people, increasingly relying on science and engineering, which has been the main creator of wealth and jobs over the last 30, 40 years in this country and in the world, then we find that you and us are in the challenging but privileged position of making a difference in really and truly populating the leaders of our economy going into the future. And we cannot let them get lost. I find those numbers really quite sobering in a way, but also quite exciting. And it's not all half empty. One statistic that I like to quote that I've read somewhere is that the jump in college enrollment for Hispanics actually outpaces everybody else. I think it was on the order of 350,000 in the years 2009, 2010 of Hispanics, new Hispanics enrolling in college, when white Anglo-Saxon males went down by 350,000. At the same time. So it tells me that the momentum is there, and we have to make sure we understand what causes that momentum. I believe that there are elements and to what makes it successful, will make us successful in bringing bright young minds into college and to certainly science and engineering. And I like to think of one is resources. I heard that earlier. People do need resources, but it's not all that. Is ingraining the idea of the value of education in families, which I happen to think, coming from a Hispanic family, that is not too hard to do. when presented well. So we have that in our blood, and I think it's an easy sell if we just do it right. Not lowering our expectations. One thing I dislike very, very much is the idea that our underrepresented minorities or students are not in some way expected to do as well as anybody else. In fact, like some of you in the crowd that know me, I say exactly the opposite. I expect them to do better than everybody else because they can. And that's a message that has to continuously be repeated. The other part which should not be forgotten is the whole issue of mentoring and providing those examples of people that succeed. We at Georgia Tech are very proud of that. I think this is an institution that, as you know, is world-class. We are among the top 4 institutions in the United States in engineering. We are ranked number 20-something in the world universities ranking, 15 or so in the world's universities rankings in science and engineering. Every engineering program we have is ranked in the top 10. I don't think any other institution can claim the same thing. We are quite a power, but one of our biggest source of pride, I think, and it has been for a long time, is our commitment to diversity. Few institutions have a vice president dedicated to diversity, and Archie Irvin sitting back there is a member of the cabinet, is a major player in everything that happens in this institution. Few institutions are as flat as this institution, and let me put it this way so you'll understand what I mean. The academic enterprise in this institution, which is the center of the institution, is run by the provost and by 6 academic deans. All right? So you have 7 people. Out of that 7 people, we have 1 Hispanic and 2 African Americans. I don't think that there's any other institution that can say the same thing. In our schools or departments, the last 2 appointments for school chairs has been a woman and an African American. We in essence do more than talk, and feel very, very proud of that. And we show it. We graduate in advanced degrees, more PhDs of underrepresented minorities in engineering than anybody else. We're among the top in graduates of Hispanics, also masters and PhDs anywhere in the country, both at the bachelor's and advanced degrees. So we are very, very committed to what you're trying to do, and you can always count on us to be here and ready to work with you to make it a reality. We're very proud to have you here. We're very proud to hosting you here. Thank you.
I could have stayed home and been upwardly delegated, too. I didn't have to come here. I am so excited that you're here and are going to share some more information with us. The good news is there are a lot of activities going on across the country in this effort, but the bad news is nobody knows about it. So I'm going to challenge you today to take the information that you have today and do a blast email to all your friends saying, hey, check this data out, whether they're in Utah or Idaho or North Carolina or Louisiana. Places that we don't always think of where there may be a large Latino population, but the movement is everywhere. Every state in this nation has seen a growth in the number of Latinos who are moving there for a variety of reasons, economic, family, jobs, whatever. But the reality is we're dealing with them still on a one-to-one basis, and there needs to be this national effort to recognize the fact that this population is important and that it's big. and that it's going to be necessary to make sure that they have the tools they need to be successful in the future. So with that, we will adjourn this section of the meeting and hope that you will still hang around and talk to us a little bit about things that you know that are going on, and we'll share contacts and just keep this conversation going. Thank you very much.